and Obi has brought somebody back from the other tower, so that's where we're up to. The next morning, I ask Obi and Dory if I can do something to help. They're talking about how much food we have left and how long it will last us. I haven't been listening properly to what they've been saying. And then Obi says, Addy, you can help with that, okay? Yes, you'll do a fine job, says Dory. I look up at their smiling faces, nodding, and they tell me what they want me to do. My job is to go into flat and bring back any food that we can eat. I also need to tell Obi if I find any water. Since Gaia's tower fell, I haven't felt much like doing anything. Obi said that she wasn't there, but I know he didn't have time to look everywhere in the block. What if she was hiding somewhere other than her flat? I really want to ask Obi more about it, but I don't like to ask him lots of questions. It's not that I'm scared of him or anything. I'm just not sure he would like it. It's good to be doing something other than sitting around, but it doesn't stop me from thinking about Gaia. I can't stop remembering times when we were together. Everything reminds me of her. Eating dinner with Obi and Dory reminds me of the time just after I told Gaia about Mum not leaving the flat. She asked me if I would like to come round for dinner at her flat. Come tonight, she said. We'll go straight to mine. Does your mum know? Have you asked her? No, said Gaia, looking surprised that I'd asked. She'd say no if I asked her, but if you just turn up, she won't be able to. I don't know, I said. There was some sort of unwritten rule that Gaia and I could only see each other at school. I'm not sure how it came about exactly, but sometimes adults don't want to tell us what to do all the time. We can sense what they want. Your mum never has to know, exclaimed Gaia. And you can see my garden. The mint is really tasty in tea. Come on, Addy. Joll off. Tell me you don't want it. I knew how kind Gaia was being. She was willing to risk her mum being annoyed with her to make sure I had a proper dinner, but I couldn't bring myself to say yes. It felt like I would have crossed over a line if I'd gone, not saying anything to Mum when I got back, while my belly was full with Gaia's mum's cooking. Fine, seat yourself, Gaia said, and I could tell she was cross with me. It's just, Mum, it's fine, Addy. I said it was fine. Sometimes it's those memories that are the most painful of all, more so than the happy ones. I hope that one day I may get the chance to say sorry to her. I decide to ask the person that Obi brought back if they know what happened to her family as soon as I can. Until then, I just think in my head, you're all right, Gaia. You're all right, Gaia. You're all right, Gaia. Because everyone knows if you think about something enough, then there's a good chance it'll come true. We decide to put all the food into one of the flats next to Dory's so you can see how much we have. There isn't space to store it all at Dory's. Obi gives me one of these bags with wheels at the bottom that you pull behind you to carry the food in. He tells me to start from the top floor and gives me a large bunch of keys so I can open everyone's door. I have to leave them unlocked because we need to start using everyone else's toilet now. Ours aren't flushing anymore, so we have to start using different ones or the smell will get too bad. The first flat I go into has lots and lots of food in it. It looks like a big family lived here. There are lots of kids' drawings stuck onto the fridge and toys scattered around the sitting room. I think men must have left in a hurry because there are heaps of clothes about the place and drawers left open. I don't look around the flat much though. I just head to the kitchen. Even though everyone's gone, it's strange to go into these people's homes. It was a bit different when I went into Michael's mum's flat because I knew them and I had been there before. This feels a bit different, like I'm trespassing. But we need to eat, and the people who lived here don't need the food right now. So I pull a chair over to be able to open the cupboards. They are full of things we can take, and that's when I have a good idea. I'll do the same as I did when I took the tin of beans and bags of rice from Michael's mum's flat. I'll keep a list of everything I take from every flat I go into. If the tower stays standing and the world goes back to normal and the people who live here come back, then we'll just replace everything that we took using my list. It makes me feel a lot better about taking the food. I run off to my flat and find my scrapbook and a pen so I can start straight away. I write the flat number at the top of the page and then I start my list. There's cans of coconut milk and bags of brown rice. I find some old yams which are still okay to eat, but not any other kind of vegetable. Obi told me not to open the fridges. They've been off for a long time now, so everything will be bad inside them. I fill the bag quickly, and there's still plenty to come back for, and then I start tripping downstairs to Dory's floor. It takes a long time because of all the stairs and the bag is heavy. It judders down each step with a loud thump. Finally, I reach the flat where keeping the food, and Dory is waiting for me. She takes everything out and starts sorting through what I found. Her job is to put everything away. I go back upstairs with my empty bag, but on the way, I stop at my flat and go to my bedroom to find my red rucksack. It's not as big as the one that Obi gave me, but it's big enough and much easier to carry. The next time I just fill my rucksack, and that means I can run down the stairs with the food. I can't carry as much each time, but it makes me much faster, and after a few runs up and down, the food starts to pile up. There are lots of tins and bags of food and bottles of oil. I also find quite a few packets of biscuits in one flat, 6 bars of chocolate. I think it's time for a rest and lunch, Dory says. She picks up a couple of tins from a large stack, and we go back into her flat. It's potato and leek soup. I've never had it before, and I'm not sure if I like it. Dory sees my spoon hovering over the bowl. Even if you don't like it, Addie, you must eat some, she says. It doesn't taste too bad. In fact, it doesn't taste much of anything. When we finished eating, we play a quick game of cards before we get back to work. Obi doesn't come to eat with us today. Dory says we'll see him later. Before I leave, Dory gives me a box of crackers to take to Mum with a little bowl of soup. The day seems to be over much more quickly than usual. I find some good things after lunch. Some big bottles of water that I'll tell Obi about later, and a large orange net of bag of onions, which Dory was really pleased about. My scrapbook's filling up with lists of food. I must have done about 4 pages today. Before I know it, I can hear Dory and Obi's voice from inside Dory's flat, and I can smell something cooking for dinner. When I get to the front door, though, I don't go in straight away. I'm not sure why. I wait for a moment and listen to what they are saying. It's about how upset someone is. They must be talking about the person Obi rescued from the other tower. I hear Obi say, he's not in a good way, and no one should have to see that, and we'll have to keep an eye on him. And then they start talking about the food we have, and I go in. After dinner, Dory says that I've worked hard today, so I should go to the flat where we're storing the food and pitch something for dessert. It's a little bit like being in a funny sort of shop. I go to the safe where Dory said to put all the sweet things, and there's a big pile of different types of biscuits, bags of cakes that look like little boats, and large blocks of chocolate. I have to rummage around for a little while before I find what I'm looking for. I found it in the first flat I went into this morning, a little plastic box full of chin-chin, little crunchy pieces of chin-chin. Mum used to make it for me as a treat, but I didn't have it we didn't have it in for a long time. She used to let me cut the dough into small squares, and then she would drop them into the pan of hot oil to fry them. She'd stir, and then scoop them out of the pan into a plate with a square of kitchen roll on it. The smell they'd make when they were cooking used to hang around for days afterwards, long after we'd finished eating them all. I shake the little box that I found, and it rattles. Good choice, kid, Obi said, and we sit eating the chin-chin until it's all gone. The next day is much the same. I bring food from the top floor down to Dory, and she puts it all into different piles in the flat. All the bags of rice and pasta are kept in the bath, bottles are put into the kitchen, and tins are kept in the bedroom. Dory says I can take a break from carrying the food after lunch, and tells me to arrange tins for a bit. I spend a long time building them into a castle with 4 tall turrets at each corner and battlements at the top of the walls. Dory laughs when she sees it. That wasn't exactly what I meant, Addie, but a splendid piece of work nonetheless, she says, and I feel pinkly glad from her praise. Sometimes it feels like it has been Dory, Obi, and me, and that it will go on this way, unchanging forever. That evening, though, as I approach Dory's door for dinner, I hear something new, something different. It isn't Obi's low, deep rumble of a voice or Dory's sing-song way of speaking. It is someone else, someone new. I stop myself from opening the door straight away, as though I want to prepare myself. It must be the person from Gaia's tower, the person that Obi rescued, someone who might be able to tell me where Gaia is. They might know her. They might have seen her leave, perhaps. My heart seems to skip 2 beats, one after another, and I feel excited and oddly nervous, which makes me dally in the doorway for just a few more minutes before I knock on the door. That's Addie, I hear Dory say. Come in, Addie. I push the door open slowly. Now, Addie, what have I told you about knocking? Dory chides. You know you can come straight in. There is a tall, thin man sitting at the table. He has sandy hair that looks like it's a bit overgrown and a wiry blonde beard that makes his face look quite long. Dory says to me, This is Ben, Addie. Say hello. Hello, Ben. I say. I pause. I want to ask him about Gaia straight away, but something about the way he looks at me stops. Ben's eyes are red, as if he's been rubbing them really, really hard, and his hair is sticking up all over the place and looks greasy. Of course, we're all looking a bit grubby these days. We don't wash hardly at all anymore. Water is too precious to waste on washing, Obi says. Instead, we've all got packs of baby wipes that we use, but there's nothing we can do about our hair. I've never seen Obi's hair sticking up like that, though. I decide to wait until later to ask Ben if he knows Gaia and if she left the building. Ben doesn't talk much that evening. He doesn't join in when Dory, Obi, and I tell each other about our favourite animals. Me, a dog, Dory, an elephant, and Obi, a gorilla. And he doesn't say, "That's great, Dory, thanks for dinner," when he finishes eating, like Obi and I always do. He just sits there, eating really slowly. And after I finish, Dory spoons out some food on a plate for me to take up to Mum. "Do you want to take this now, Addie, and then come back for some cards, or shall we see you in the morning?" I'm just about to say I'll come back when Ben starts speaking. "Where's his mum?" he says, and he looks from me to Dory to Obi. No one says anything. It's one of the things that from the very beginning made me like Dory and Obi. They've always seemed to know, without me telling them, that I don't want to talk about Mum not coming out of our flat. It's not that we don't talk about Mum. They often say, "How's your mum doing, Addie?" Or, "I hope your mum likes dinner tonight." And sometimes I tell them little stories about Mum and me, but they never ask me, "Why don't we see your mum?" or "What's wrong with your mum, Addie?" And they never sound angry or cross with her when we do talk about her. Not like Michael's mum. She used to say to me all the time, "I don't know what that mother of yours is thinking." She would sound so mad when she said it, as if she was spitting the words from her mouth like orange pips. "Why isn't she with him?" Ben is saying now. His voice is getting louder now, and his stare starts getting harder as he looks at each one of us. I think I can feel it zapping me in the face through the air. I can see that Dory and Obi are trying to think of the right thing to say. They don't want to tell him that Mum can't leave the flat, but at the same time, there isn't much more to say than that. So I just tell him, "Oh," says Ben, "can't she walk very well?" "No, it's not like that," I say. "She doesn't want to go out of the flat. She doesn't like it so much that she can't do it." Ben is looking at me so hard now that his eyes will start watering. Then I realise his eyes aren't watering. He's crying. Joy puts a hand on his shoulder because he's really sobbing now, and he's not looking at me anymore. He's put his face right down onto his plate of food. "Come on, Addie," Obi says. "I'll walk up with you." I stand up, and even though I don't want to go, because I haven't asked Ben about Gaia yet, I walk to the door with Obi. We leave Dory's flat and start climbing up the stairs. Because it's summer, there's still plenty of daylight until quite late, which means we don't need to worry about taking torches with us around after dinner. I say this to Obi and he nods. "Why did Ben cry when I told him about Mum?" I asked. And what Obi tells me next really surprises me, because I thought Mum was the only person who didn't like to go out. "Ben had a wife who was a bit like your mum," he says. "She didn't like leaving her bedroom, but she died, and that's why he's so sad." I can't believe that there are other people like Mum, especially that there was someone like Mum who didn't live very far away, who was only down the street in Gaia's Tower. I suppose that only the people who really couldn't leave would have stayed, like Mum, and then me because I won't leave her, and Ben's wife, and then Ben because he wouldn't leave her. I wonder why Dory and Obi stayed. I'll ask them sometime. There must have been a reason. I suppose there are so many of us in all these towers, all on top of each other, one family above another and another and another, so that we are stretching to the sky, that maybe it's not so strange that there was someone like Mum in Gaia's Tower. Maybe there was another Dory and another Obi too. Perhaps there was another Addie. And then we're at my flat. Obi tells me to wait for a little while, but to come back down to it in a bit if I want to. Then he leaves and I listen to his footsteps disappear down the corridor. Mum's bedroom is dark and quiet. I pull open the curtain a crack so the last of the day's sunlight makes a little yellow line on the wall. Mum doesn't wake up. I take her dirty plate and carefully place her dinner on the table. It's funny to think she hasn't met Obi or Dory or even Ben. I wonder if she wants to know how I'm getting all this food now and where I go all day. But does she still think I'm at school? Has she looked outside and seen what the Bluches have done? I look at her sleeping face. She's so still and silent, but I can hear the tiny sighs as she breathes in and out. I leave her then, tiptoe out of the room and close the door behind me. Only when I'm walking back down to Dory's flat do I remember that I forgot to shut the curtain. The thought makes me feel glad somehow, because I know that tomorrow morning Mum will wake up in the sunshine, not in the darkness.